the special meeting of council on June the 22nd at 3 p.m. And I will ask any member if they have a pecuniary interest, and if they do, please let us know what the general nature of it is. Mr. Malloy, do you have pecuniary interest?
None.
Mr. Foster?
None.
Mr. Cameron?
None.
And Mr. Helpney?
No.
Nor does the mayor. I do have a motion. I'll do as I've done in the past. If you're not comfortable being the mover and then seconder, please let me know. This is for approval of the agenda. So moved by Mr. Foster, seconded by Mr. Helpney. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville Wolford does hereby approve the agenda of the special council meeting of June the 22nd, 2020. Are you all right to be the mover and the seconder? Mover, Mr. Foster, seconder, Mr. Helpney? Thank you.
I am, yes.
Thank you. All in favor? Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
And Mr. Helpney?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion, and the mayor votes yes, and the motion is carried. Next, gentlemen, I think we're doing them one at a time. There are two sets of minutes. We're doing them separately. The first one is for the June 4th meeting, and the second one is the June 18th meeting. So it'll be moved by Mr. Cameron and seconded by Mr. Malloy. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville Wolford is hereby approve the minutes of the special council meeting of June the 4th, 2020. And I'll go around the table. Any errors and or omissions, Mr. Malloy?
None that I can see.
Thank you. Mr. Foster?
Oh.
Any errors and or omissions?
Oh.
Mr. Cameron, any errors and or omissions?
No.
And Mr. Helpney?
No.
No, nor from the mayor, so I'll go around for the vote to approve the minutes as circulated. Mr. Malloy in favor?
Yes.
And Mr. Foster?
Yes.
And Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
And Mr. Helpney?
Yes.
And the mayor as well. The motion is carried. And the second set of minutes is for the June 18th meeting, so it'll be moved by Mr. Foster and seconded by Mr. Cameron. Are you okay to be the movers and the seconder, Mr. Foster and Mr. Cameron?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Moved by Mr. Foster, seconded by Mr. Cameron. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville Wolford does hereby approve the minutes of the special council meeting of June the 18th, 2020. Mr. Malloy, any errors and or omissions?
Again, nothing I can see.
Thank you. Mr. Foster?
No errors or omissions.
Thank you. Mr. Cameron?
No.
And Mr. Helpney?
No.
And nor from the mayor. So we will, so moved by Mr. Foster, seconded by Mr. Cameron to approve the minutes of the special meeting of the June the 18th, 2020 as circulated. All in favor. Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
Mr. Helpney?
Yes.
And the mayor as well. The motion is carried. Thank you. And next on our agenda, gentlemen, is the report and recommendations regarding the community grant program. And members will recall that applications went out. The deadline was, I believe, January the 30th for people to submit their applications. And of course, we go through them and do what the exercise we're doing today after we would have passed the budget to confirm we have a specific number of dollars in the budget, and the budget we passed on March the 23rd, I believe. At any rate, I'll make put a motion on the table, and it'll be moved by Mr. Helpney and seconded by Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville Wolford does hereby receive report finance FIN-11-2020, being a report regarding the 2020 Community Grant Program for information purposes, and that Council does hereby approve the allocation of the 2020 community grants to the applicants that meet the eligibility requirements and whose events will occur in 2020 as outlined in this report. So I'll go around the table and ask any members, sorry, first of all, was there anything staff wanted to add to the report that's presented to council? And I'm getting a no from staff at this point. So are there any questions? And I'll go around the table. Any questions, Mr. Malloy?
I'm somewhat concerned about the number of entities that did not file a final report, and therefore were deemed to be not in accordance with the policy. I'm just seeing that a lot of these, example, Christmas Miracle didn't file a report. Jazz Fest was disqualified. Canal Fest was disqualified. And I'm just curious as to, and I suspect we did, but how far did we go to remind these people they have to submit reports?
I'm going to get a confirmation from staff when they, and I'll ask them maybe just speak to it as to how that process works, prior sort of filing an application and receiving the money. So I'll ask Kristen maybe come a little closer to the microphone so we can hear.
Yes, thank you, through you, Your Worship. So the applicants who are required to file a final report are those who received a cash grant, and the letter that was sent along with the check told them about this requirement, and the final report was also provided to them in the same envelope that the check was. So. Okay,
thank you. Did you hear that all right, Mr. Malloy?
Yeah, but I don't think that was my question. My question was, what do we do to remind them? It's okay to put that like a standard sort of operation. The two letters go together in the same envelope. But a lot of these grants or a lot of these applications are substantial applications and substantial to the running of the village. Canal Fest is a huge element to the village. Maybe not this year, but and Jazz Fest is another one. All of these, they're substantial elements of our community, and if they don't succumb, or they don't succumb, that's not the right word. If they don't fulfill their obligations, are we phoning them back? Are we getting a hold of them saying, listen guys, you got to do this, or you're not going to get it? Are they being reminded that it needs to be done? I look at it, and it seems to me the total value of recommended grant is $3,019, yet the budget allocation for community grants is $13,000. So I mean, obviously there's money there for them to be for those community groups to be had, and I just think we should be doing everything we can to remind them, encourage them, and at least over the phone we're not applying this year. We don't need it, so go away type of thing.
Thank you. Mr. Foster, do you have any questions?
Yes, actually, similar to Councillor Malloy's concerns, in particular on page 2 of 3 of the staff report, where it states that staff recommends automatically rejecting any 2020 grant applications that did not satisfy the grant requirements in 2019. My concern here is that most of these boards are volunteer run. Organizers change from year to year. I certainly wouldn't want to see grant applications discarded because it could be another entirely different board or group of volunteers that failed to meet the requirements. So what I'm suggesting is that we have to show a little bit of leniency here as regards different groups that apply. It may be the same name on the group, but it may not be the same people. So I support Councillor Malloy's suggestion that we have to make it very clear, and it's not nothing wrong with making a phone call and trying to clear things up to make sure these people qualify.
Thank you. Mr. Cameron.
I agree with both other councillors, but I also have something I'd like to have addressed here. It identifies that any monies that are unused will be sent towards offsetting potential deficit at the end of the year. I was wondering if that's $9,981. There's been some concern about washrooms and cleaning and PPEs for staff and so on and so forth, and we had a discussion, and there's been a number of emails of interest that maybe we can take some of these funding for our community grants and move it towards recovering or going towards some cost cleaning public washrooms and making access of our visitors here. And then I was also wondering, it states that, because of this, this is what they want to do with the money, but are we not tracking our losses during the COVID-19, for our baseball diamonds, our facilities, our utility bills, and so on and so forth, because they want to suggest here that they want to use that money for that. Are we not going to go after the provincial government for grants or recovery funds for the municipality?
Okay, I'll speak to both those points in a moment, okay, Mr. Cameron? Mr. Halpenny, do you have any questions?
Oh, no, I think everything's pretty well covered. I know boards do change, but I imagine there's enough members still on those boards that if they need the money, they'd go after it. Because of the 19, there's a lot of things that are canceled, so they won't need the money. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll just go a bit in reverse order. In terms of what the staff have indicated that with the balance of undistributed dollars, what they're looking at is, at the end of the year, should we be in a deficit situation, those dollars can go towards offsetting, I won't say deficit situation, our, we'll call it lost revenue, and that'll be a report that'll be coming forward in our July meeting. There'll be the usual quarterly staff reports, and of course we know we didn't have those at the end of January because we were literally just into the pandemic and the provincial emergency declaration. So we'll have the quarterly reports to the end of June, and staff will also have a year-to-date report on where we are in terms of our budget. And staff have been since the very beginning, and I think I can't remember how many meetings back I did indicate to council that staff are tracking our, call it COVID-19 costs, as both Minister Clark has mentioned at least 2 times that I can specifically recall, for municipalities to keep track of their costs. Indeed, recently there were a lot of municipalities looking to the provincial and or federal governments for some kind of assistance to municipalities down the road. So at the moment we don't know specifically, how much revenue we have, we'll say, lost to date from things like rental of the community center as an example. And on the washrooms, there will be more information. How do I word this? Staff are continuing to look at ways to be able to safely open our public washrooms for in the municipality. Excuse me a moment. Sorry about that, gentlemen. Can we do it as soon as possible? They continue to communicate with the health unit, seeing what other municipalities are doing. There may be one other municipality that we know of that might be opening one of its public washrooms the end of next week. So they're communicating with that municipality to see not just what they are doing, but where do they get their guidelines from, so it'll be safe for the public to use the washrooms, but also safe for staff to do the whatever is required, disinfectant or sanitizing. So that's an ongoing opportunity. I'm not going to suggest that we would use these dollars if there is a balance in the community grant program for those kinds of costs. We could track those, as you indicated, Mr. Cameron, so that the if there is relief at a later date for municipalities for COVID-19 expenses, will be there'll be something from senior levels of government. Back to the, I guess, the one theme that's going around the table is that, what do we do to make sure that people file the report? Well, straight up is, it's obvious that the grant application process, that requirement is part of it. And as staff indicated, when they had an approved application, in the envelope with the check was very specific direction to provide the financial report, if that's the right wording, after their event. There was not any follow-up in it. And what the recommendations are, straight up from staff, are going through that process. You see it in the chart, by our very specific bylaw that council unanimously passed. So it's while we can do whatever we want, I do remind council members it is a bylaw that put us in this opportunity to have people apply and assess and see how they qualify, should they be applying in the following year. So if we look, I'm not sure what else council members would want from staff. It's fairly straightforward. The staff report, again, is based very specifically on the bylaw that council passed. Now, the other thing I might comment on, and I can't remember how many other councillors, but on there was a Zoom meeting, a teleconference Zoom meeting with a number of organizations in our municipality, everything from Jazz Fest to I can't remember all of them, and the Chamber of Commerce, of who's doing what this year with their program. I don't have that list in front of me, but the only one that I recall specifically, Jazz Fest, is still looking at seeing if they might be able to put their Jazz Fest on. They're not saying it's an automatic yes, and at that time they're definitely not saying an automatic no. And a question was asked, well, if the money isn't spent, out of the community grant program, would there be money available later? Not for me, sorry. If you look at the presentation, the report from staff today, there definitely is money in the kitty, as they say. And my comment was, later in the year, whether that's August, September, October, even November, if there is a group wanting to put on an event, and it would require would like some support from the municipality, whether that's barricades, road closures, some financial support. Clearly, whatever it is, make the presentation, if you will, to the municipality, and obviously council would consider those kinds of opportunities in the future. So there is that motion on the table. Is there any other discussion? I'll go around the table again. Mr. Malloy.
Yes, it certainly is. I understand that we passed a resolution, but I also understand that we are a small community, and we know the people who run these things, and we know that this is an extraordinary year on this situation, but I think we're talking about the situation going forward, and that we should be endeavoring to go the extra mile to encourage these community events to continue to offer them the financial support they needed. If they've forgotten to do something, then yeah, we got to be on the phone to them saying, listen, guys, if you want the money, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. There's a lot of things going on people may have forgotten. And I think when you look at things like Canal Fest, Jazz Fest, Christmas in Marysville, holy listen, that's just a few of them. It's a litany of events that make the commercial and the commercial element of our village manifest itself. So I think we've got to do more than just say, well, we passed a bylaw saying, and if they don't, they don't. We've got to be encouraging them to do it. We've got to be looking at them going, even if we pass it on to our economic development officer saying, listen, get hold of these guys and see what's going on. Because that would certainly be economic development to make sure they fulfill all their obligations. Yeah, I don't think it's good enough just to say, well, we passed that bylaw and they didn't do it, so good. Let's go on, move on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think anybody's wanting to be, I'm not sure what the right word is. We just want to make sure the council is very, very well aware that you did correct. It's not a resolution. It is a bylaw. And the requirement for every one of those ones that did not file their financial report was done last year. And the applications were filed January 30th. So it's not like people were doing this in the middle of the pandemic. And we also need to keep in mind that these are taxpayers' dollars as well. And
I don't believe that's the issue.
I
don't
not,
think
no, Mr. Malloy, I'm not trying to make an issue on one side or the other. I'm just trying to make sure that council members are aware of certain things as we have this discussion. I just want to, thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Before I go to Mr. Foster, I think our treasurer wants to make a comment, or please stand by, gentlemen.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through you. I just wanted to remind council, per attachment A, there was only.
we can't. I don't know about anything else. I can get to here.
Okay, I'll ask Kirsten to come a little closer to the microphone. Thanks. If anybody else can't hear, don't, please speak up and let us know. But here we go to Kirsten again.
Thank you. Now, I just wanted to remind council that as per attachment A, there was only one group that did not submit the final report and also applied for 2020, and that event was canceled due to COVID. That's the Canal Fest. That was the only group in here that did not submit the final report and also applied for 2020 funding.
Okay,
Well,
okay, that's good to know. Just stand by for a moment. Anything else? Sandra?
Well, yes, actually, it wasn't just that there were also other issues for some of the others as a reason why they were disqualified, and that was flow-through funding was also another big one that was contrary to our policy.
So,
yeah, she's cutting in. Sorry, Kristen, you're cutting in and out.
so what Kirsten said was there was the only one in the chart. It was Canal Fest that had not filed a financial report. However, they have not applied for anything. Sorry, they may have applied for this year, but they have canceled the event for this year. So the Canal Fest is not happening. Okay.
Yeah, that was due to.
And I think that was my point. This year is a special year altogether, and so a lot of these things are going to be said. But let's say this was 2020, 21, and we had everybody sort of wanted to go forward. I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, right off the top. Disqualified as per attachment A, disqualified as per attachment A, disqualified as per attachment A, disqualified as per attachment A. And those are the ones that are just right in front of me right now.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
we are disqualifying people because they haven't fulfilled their obligations in submitting report. Fair enough, but that's awfully technical for elements of our economic well-being as a village, as a tourist designation, that we should be being more operative and having encouraging people. Come on, get the report, and we need the report, or you know.
Yep.
That's all I'm saying. We can't just draw a line in the sand and say that's it. You didn't do it. We've got to be encouraging them and helping them and cajoling them into making their final reports.
Thank you for that. The other point that Kirsten was also making, and I don't have the specific ones in front of me, and that was entities that were receiving grant money and then distributing money at the end of their event, which also is in the bylaw to not do that. So,
I read that, yeah.
yeah. Anything else from staff at this point?
Thank you, Worship. I think you've covered it. Essentially, just a reminder that because it's not just a procedural technicality where they didn't file a report, and please remember that the original policy went through a lot of scrutiny with council. It was high profile. It was in the public record. When we issue the call, it's public. We communicate that just to bring council's attention to it in multiple ways. And it's not just a matter of not filing a report. Some of these agencies have taken public funds, which council has approved for a specific use, and redonated it to a cause that they believe in.
Yes,
So-
thank you. Yeah, Mr. Foster, did you have anything additional you wanted to ask or say?
Councillor Malloy sort of summed it up. I agree with him in that we do have to show a little bit of mercy towards our groups. This is still in the early phases for this program. I think the program is an excellent idea, and it does promote accountability. Certainly the flow-through funding that the CAO was talking about, I'm glad that we're putting a stop to that. But in terms of, as I'm sure this unfolds, there will be events that will come to us, and we can review them on a case-by-case basis at the council level as well. So, no further comments.
Okay. Did you have anything new to add, Mr. Cameron?
Well, I just wanted to go back and talk about that Zoom conference that you had mentioned, just to rest assure the rest of council and staff that I believe there was some concern from some of the groups about the funding, and I'm sure that if I recall it properly, you, the mayor, had indicated that because of the challenges that we meet, and we do have the bylaw in place, that we would not turn anybody down if some of the restrictions and some of the groups decided to hold their affairs later on in the year, that they could bring it to council and we would reconsider them.
Yes, I think, yeah, there were some comments as to why the first part of your comment was, why haven't the applicants been received their money? And that was because, as is mentioned earlier, the deadline for applying was January the 30th, but we weren't able to do it, the processing, assessing, and council, deciding until after the budget was passed. So that was that part. And Mr. Cameron is quite right. I indicated that because on that meeting, a number of people said they were not having events this year. And whether it was their event that they would, we'll say resurrect later in the year, or a new event that might be, beneficial to the business community, et cetera, that the council, bring it to council, and we would give it due consideration to assist in some manner. Again, whether it's barricades, road closures, or financial assistance. So that's a very good point, Mr. Cameron. Thank you for that. Anything else to add, Mr. Helpney?
No, I just want to remind the rest of the councillors that staff does have to follow certain rules and regulations. And like the mayor said, if there's something new or something things coming down, we can have a look at it later on. But, behind staff to do the job and follow the rules. Thank you.
So, what am I hearing? A suggestion, and see what council members think, and from a process point of view to staff, we could approve the funding today that they're recommending to receive applications, and say to an entity that did not file their financial report to contact them and say, if you provide your financial report, council is prepared to give some reconsideration to the initial report from staff. I should say, because you're not fulfilling the requirement of, as you were told for the bylaw. I'm not sure if I'm wording that very well. Before I ask council's thoughts on that, I'll turn to staff for a moment.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just so that we're clear, I believe Kirsten's indicating that there was only one agency that failed to provide the report, and as the exclusive cause for them being disqualified. So if I just want to make sure we have your directions clear. So we will contact you. The suggestion is that we would contact that one agency, give them an opportunity to submit their final report from the previous year.
Yep.
Subject to them submitting it by perhaps a suggested date.
Yep.
Then we would come back to council, if they do, to seek council's approval to make that payment.
Yep.
Is that clear? Perhaps the treasurer has a question?
Yes, through you, Your Worship, thank you. Yeah, that's clear. My only point, though, Canal Fest was scheduled to occur in May or August, I believe. So never mind, I got my dates mixed up. That's fine.
Nonetheless, I think we would still ask them
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
I think, as Mr. Malloy said, they may have one next year. Technically, they might not qualify next year. So please, Canal Fest, you get your financial report in. Even though you're not looking for funding this year because you're not having your event, it keeps you in good stead for future years. So, is everybody clear on what we could do today, and what we could have staff do for that other entity to provide? As Mr. Malloy indicated, more than strongly saying to them, get your financial report in so it can be. As I say, kept in good stead for future years. Is everybody comfortable with that direction? Mr. Malloy?
Yeah, can I ask one quick question, particularly
Of course.
Canal Fest?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is Canal Fest, who sponsors Canal Fest? Is that the Lions Club?
My understanding from memory is yes, it is.
Okay, I find that hard to fathom because I'm pretty sure they're good at submitting the appropriate documentation. So that would be one I would sort of suggest you get to the president and say what's going on.
Fair enough.
Be-
Yeah,
the one,
so-
one individual in charge may not be submitting, but the Lions Club itself would more than likely submit if they knew that that was required.
Fair enough, yeah. Anyway, yes, certainly will be, I'm looking at staff indicating that you might start off contacting the president directly as they're trying to find out who was the organizer, if you will.
Yeah.
Are you all right with that direction, Mr. Foster?
I am.
And Mr. Cameron?
So just to be clear, we're going to approve the grants already applied for, and we're going to leave the door open for everybody else when the COVID-19 situation change, should it do so?
No, what we're going to do is approve the applications that are in our package today that staff have indicated that they, a recommendation to approve. So we're approving those. And
I agree with.
Pardon me?
I agree with that.
Yeah, great. And just to make sure everybody's clear, and also then contacting the entity that did not do the financial report last year, and notwithstanding what, whether we need a balance of money in this line item on the budget or any others, again, we'll get an update in July how we're doing, but we will have some dollars in this line item that council might consider if somebody has an event later on in the year, whether it's one of the existing events just at a different date, or it could, as they say, be a brand new event. So we'll leave those, obviously those dollars will stay in this account for council to consider down the road. Are you all right with that direction, Mr. Helpney?
Yes.
That's great. Okay, so members,
All right, can I ask a quick question before we go to that?
yes, Mr. Malloy, go ahead.
So, just to clarify, so the money that's been allocated by budget, which is, I think, $13,000, that's going to remain on that line item. We're not diminishing that. We'll leave that in play up to the end of this year then.
Absolutely. Or that's my suggestion, we don't need it for anything else at this time.
Yeah. No, that's all I'm saying. I don't want us to start, pulling money from that line just to fulfill some other requirement that we have, and then not have the money there if somebody comes forward with something.
Correct, we're not going to do that. You're correct.
Perfect.
So unless members need the motion read again, I'll call the vote as to be all in favor. I just want to read over the motion that we receive the financial report is the first part. And then the second part, the council does hereby approve the allocation of the 2020 community grants to the applicants that meet the eligibility requirement and whose events will occur in 2020 as outlined in the report. And I can handwrite in, I don't know that we need it in the motion, but council has verbally given direction and approved the direction to staff to contact the entity to do their financial report. So we don't need that added to the motion. Okay. If everybody's good with that, I'll call the vote. Mr. Malloy in favor.
Certainly.
Mr. Foster.
Yes.
Mr. Cameron.
Yes.
Mr. Helpney.
Yes.
Mr. Struthers does as well. The motion is carried. Thank you, gentlemen. Great conversation. Good discussion. As we always do. And I have a confirmatory bylaw here.
Can
And
I interrupt one more time? Please?
you can ask a question, yep, but not interrupt. Pardon me. Go ahead, Mr. Malloy.
Technicalities here, technicalities. I was looking to add something to the agenda, but it wasn't called for any additions to the agenda at the beginning of the meeting.
I was just asking if everybody was fine with the agenda as presented. Be cautious, cautiously, what were you thinking?
Well, I'm concerned with the weather we've been having, and what are the implications to water usage and things like that with people. I was going somewhere in the village today, and there was a guy power washing his driveway. And I'm concerned with the amount of water we have. I'm concerned with whether or not we've had issues like this before, and I'm not sure where this weather will go and how long it will be like this. But we should at least be looking at water restrictions and allocating usage of water for people, watering their lawns that don't need to be watered. Lawns can go brown and they'll come back green as anything once the rain comes.
Yeah,
But we should be, I don't know what our situation is, what our protocol is for water restrictions and how we get them into place.
Right. We'll put it as an agenda item, but staff are making a note. We'll probably be contacting Aqua to see, what our water consumption is and the availability of water, and we'll go from there. This may come back to council. If not, later in July, could always be a special meeting as well. So thank you for mentioning that, Mr. Malloy. We'll do a confirmatory bylaw now, so it'll be moved by Mr. Cameron and seconded by Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that bylaw 38-2020, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the special council meeting of June the 22nd, 2020, be read a first and second time, and that bylaw 38-2020 be read a third and final time and passed. All in favor, Mr. Malloy,
Yes.
Mr. Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Halpney,
Yes.
and the mayor as well. The motion is carried. And I have a motion to adjourn, and I'll have it moved by Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Halpney. Be it hereby resolved that this special meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Village of America Wolford does hereby adjourn at 3:40 p.m. until the call of the mayor is subject to need. And I will go around the table. Mr. Malloy, in favor?
Yes.
And Mr. Foster?
Yes.
And Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
And, Mr. Halpney?
Yes.
And the mayor as well. I keep having to look around the table to get, conjure up the names. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. Stay, obviously, we were saying, safe and healthy, and in this weather, hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Have a good afternoon, gentlemen.